Shalom, shalom, shalom. How's everybody this evening?
Hello, fine.
Gary, you doing okay? All right. Richard, hello. Baruch, Miriam,
Hello.
welcome to this portion of Torah is for everyone. And it's called Bo. What does it mean, Brian? Bo? Oh, you got your mute is on. I've
Come,
got, pardon?
come.
That's what it means, come, but they always say go. You're absolutely right, Richard. Moses is saying, come, or God is telling Moses, come back to Egypt and go tell Pharaoh, let my people go. One of the best things about the Torah, as you mentioned before we started the recording, Jerry, for me, the best thing about the Torah is that I can rely on it for truth. I've gotten into several conversations today, one about politics, one about the environment, one about religion, and everybody has their sources, the things that they choose to believe. And I mean, even the history books that we read in school, we used to learn history from school. I remember one teacher saying to us, history is just old news. It's the news of the day according to the person who is writing it. But when we read the Torah and we read the stories about these people, I believe, this is my personal understanding, and I can't make anybody believe this, but I believe it is the source of all truth. And that gives me absolute joy and reassurance. And you were talking about Torah brings besimcha, it brings joy, because when you read something that resonates with your soul, it makes you joyful. Sometimes I get so excited about something that I've read or something that's happened in my life that I know God is behind it. I get such a shock of joy. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. Miriam, I think you have. Excuse me. Oh my goodness. Jerry, have you? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's get to it because one of my favorite things is to read this book together. So let me share the
When
screen.
you cannot do something, hello, Mary.
Yes,
Oh,
I'm
all
here.
right. When you cannot do something and you
Yes.
try which way, and finally it comes out right, you know who had a hand in it.
Yes. Yes. And usually I pray and I say, God, please help me do this. And it's almost like Zoom, something happens. Okay, let's begin the reading. Then Yud He Vav He, the Lord said to Moses, go to Pharaoh, or come to Pharaoh, because he was already in Egypt. God was already there. For I have hardened his heart and the heart of those in his court, in order that I may display these my signs among them. So when God hardens somebody's heart, he always has a reason. And and he not only the heart of Pharaoh, but the heart of those in his court, so that God, may display my signs, these wonders, these plagues that he was going to bring among them. And look what it says here.
Peggy,
Yes.
sorry, just to add something. I also understood it when God hardens a person's heart, it's because they're on that track already. He doesn't harden people's hearts like magic. It's like he lets them continue on the trajectory that they're on.
Exactly. I
So
totally agree.
so it's not that he's actively hardening them, he's allowing them to continue in their ways that are bad or whatever.
Yes, because when we say, this is the way I am, and I will never surrender, I will not give up who I am, then God allows us to continue.
Right.
And his part of hardening, I don't understand the process, only he does. But look at the reasons. He says, I'm going to display my signs among all those whose hearts have been hardened, so that you may recount, is talking to those who believe believe what is going to happen. You may recount in the hearing of your child and of your child's child. So we need to tell our children and our grandchildren how I made a mockery of the Egyptians and how I displayed my signs among them, in order that you may know that I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. The you is anyone who's reading this. The signs or the plagues. And when do we sit and tell the story? When do you think this is taking place?
Pesach.
Yes. And what do we do at Pesach?
We recite the story.
We read this book.
Right.
We have the Siddur, the Haggadah. The Haggadah is the telling of this story from generation to generation. We have been telling this story for over 3,500 years. And we are still telling it to our children and our children's children. Sadly, some of our children don't want to hear. And sadly, many of us didn't tell them when they were young and they needed to learn. But hopefully, after the third and fourth generations, we turn around and then we begin to tell again. And if they won't listen, we tell it to others. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said to him, "Thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me?" The word for humble is right here. Where is it? Moshe ve'Aaron el Paro liamru. Here. The word is, it's how long, this is refuse to humble yourself. La anot. It comes from the word ani, which means to impoverish, to humble. When Yeshua was giving the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," he was speaking about this impoverishing of our souls, of our humbling ourselves, because we have to be brought down before we're able to listen to anyone. If we're too filled with pride, we can't hear anyone. Let my people go that they may, and the word for worship is avodah, serve me, that they may serve me, work for me. Remember, I said the old English word for worship used to be workmanship. It's not just there to say, "Oh, I praise you and I bless you, Lord." And it's not a mouth. It's not a thing that comes from the mouth. We do that, but it's about working for God, putting him first and doing what he asks us to do, what he's calling us to do. For if you refuse to let my people go, tomorrow I will bring locusts on your territory. This was the seventh plague. In the last portion, we read the first six, and now we're on the seventh. No, this is the eighth, ninth, and 10th. We're going to do three more plagues here. 7 in last week's Va'era. So he's going to bring locusts on your territory. Some were eating locusts at that time, believe it or not. Or maybe later, those who lived in the desert would eat locusts. They would see the locusts coming and they go, we got food, but not in Egypt. They shall cover the surface of the land, so that no one will be able to see the land. They shall devour the surviving remnant that was left to you after the hail, and they shall eat away all your trees that grow in the field. The land must have looked horrendous. Moreover, they shall fill your palaces and the houses of all your courtiers, and all the Egyptians, the houses of all the Egyptians, something that neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen from the day they appeared on earth to this day. With that, he turned and he left Pharaoh's presence. Pharaoh's courtier said to him, "How long shall this one be a snare to us? Let them go to serve their God. Are you not aware that Egypt is lost?" All those around Pharaoh could see that. At least some of them did.
It says here, let a delegation, so not let
Yeah,
them
but
all go.
no, that's what he was saying. You're right. Let the participants, not everyone, some of the men.
Right.
He didn't, yeah. They were saying, well, at least let some of them go
Right.
to worship God. You're right. Sorry, Miriam, I missed
No,
that.
it's okay.
That's why we have more than one. My goodness, I know what's going on. So Moses and Aaron were brought back to Pharaoh, and he said to them, Go, go serve your God, Yud He Vav He. That's on one side of his mouth. The other side of his mouth, he's got a forked tongue like a snake. Who are the ones to go? Moses replied, We will all go, regardless of who they are, rich, poor, upper class, lower class. We will go with our sons and our daughters, our flocks and our herds, for we must observe Yud He Vav He's festival, Hag La Adonai. But he said to them, Adonai be with you, the same as I mean to let your dependents go with you. Clearly, you are bent on mischief. In other words, see if I will let you go. No, you men go and serve God, since that's what you want. And they were expelled from Pharaoh's presence. Then the Lord said to Moses, Hold out your arm over the land of Egypt, for the locusts, that they may come upon the land of Egypt and eat up all the grasses in the land, whatever the hail has left. So Moses held out his rod over the land of Egypt, and the Lord drove an east wind over the land all that day and all night. And when morning came, the east wind had brought the locusts. It's interesting, the same east wind we're going to see later on in one of the next readings. Locusts invaded all the land of Egypt and settled within all the territory in a thick mass. Never before had there been so many, nor will there ever be so many again. They hid all the land from view, and the land was darkened. It's interesting because it's almost like each plague was a little bit worse and worse and worse and worse. And here the land was darkened with the locusts, and the next one is Choshech, where the thick darkness was going to cover all the land. They ate up all the grasses of the field, all the fruits of the trees which the hail had left, so that nothing green was left of tree or grass of the field in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh hurriedly summoned Moses and Aaron and said, Here he goes again. I stand guilty before your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and before you. Forgive my offense just this once, and plead with your God, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, that this death but be removed from me. So he left Pharaoh's presence, this is Moses, and pleaded with God. And God caused a shift, a very strong west wind, which lifted the locusts and hurled them into Yam Suf. People call it the Red Sea, but it wasn't red. It was the reeds, the Sea of Reeds. Not a single locust remained in all the territory of Egypt. Who else could have done this but God? Not a single locust. Incredible. But God hardened Pharaoh's heart. He would not let the Israelites go. And God said to Moses, Hold out your arm toward the sky, that there may be a darkness upon the land of Egypt, a darkness that can be felt, it could be touched. It was so thick. Moses held out his arm toward the sky, and thick darkness descended upon all the land of Egypt for 3 days. Imagine. People could not see one another.
That must have been
We-
so scary because I think even blind people sometimes see like light or a little bit of light, or not everyone are like 100% blind. Like I'm not even sure that totally exists, but yeah, it must exist. But most blind people might see shadows or something. Here, the darkness is probably like nothing that's ever been.
Well, I remember when we were kids.
Blind before you ever get blind.
I remember we would go to the country, and I would sometimes go down the road at night, and there were no lights. The only lights were the sky, but there were still lights in the sky, the stars and the moon, so we could see a little bit. But this was a thick darkness all around. It must have been like a dense, almost like a fog that was so black. It says people could not see one another. And for 3 days, no one could move. But all the Israelites enjoyed light in their dwellings, which is amazing because just in the one place in Goshen, there was light. Incredible. Pharaoh then summoned Moses and said, "Go, worship your God. Only your flocks and your herds shall be left behind. Even your dependents may go with you." So Moses said, "So then you yourself have to provide us with sacrifices and burnt offerings to offer up to our God." If they were going to have to leave their flocks and herds behind, how were they going to have offerings? So Moses said, "Well, you, Pharaoh, you're going to need to provide us with that. With our own livestock too shall go along with us. Not a hoof shall remain behind, for we must select from it for the worship of our God, Yud He Vav He, and we won't know what we are to worship God until we arrive." So they had to take everything because they didn't know yet what God was going to ask them to offer to him. But God hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not agree to let them go. Pharaoh said to him, "Be gone from me. Take care not to see me again, for the moment you look upon my face, you shall die." And Moses replied, "You've spoken rightly. I shall not see your face again." And the Lord said to Moses, "I will bring one more plague upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt, and after that he shall let you go from here. Indeed, when he lets you go, he will drive you out of here, one and all. Tell the people to," now it says borrow, but the word is more in Hebrew, has more to do with ask, beg them, implore them. Just go to your neighbor and tell each man and each woman to give them objects of silver and gold. Yud He Vav He disposed the Egyptians favorably toward the people. By this time, they really wanted the people gone, and maybe they had pity on them, but the word is here. Let me find it. Chen, mercy, graciousness. Moreover, Moses himself was much esteemed in the land of Egypt. They all saw what Moses had done among the Pharaoh's courtiers and among the people. So, and remember, he was made to be like God to Pharaoh. And so the people would have seen that. Moses says, "Thus says Yod He Vav He, toward midnight, I will go forth among the Egyptians. I will go forth, and every male firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of the highest, Pharaoh, who sits on the throne, to the firstborn of the lowest, the slave girl, who is behind the millstones, and all the firstborn of the cattle, even the cattle, imagine. And there shall be a wail, a loud groaning, a cry in all of Egypt, such as never been or ever will be again. But not a dog shall snarl at any of the Israelites. This is an expression that says, no dog shall wet his tongue, is literally what it's saying. But they will not, none of the Israelites will be afraid. You know when how much you're afraid when you see a dog snarling at you. It raises the fear. But no Israelites would be afraid. Not a dog shall snarl at any of the Israelites, at human or beast, in order that you may know that the Lord makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. At this point, Israel was being birthed, going through the birthing canal of Egypt. Egypt had been the surrogate mother that had raised the Israelites, or that had given birth to the Israelites, and now she was going to be delivered, expelled from the surrogate mother. Then all these courtiers of yours shall come down to me and yishtachave bow low, humble themselves to me, saying, depart, you and all the people who follow you. After that I will depart. And he left Pharaoh's presence in hot anger. Now the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh will not listen to you, because my marvels will be multiplied. They have to be multiplied in the land of Egypt, not only for the Egyptians to see, the Egyptians who represent the world at that time, the powers that be, but also the Hebrews. The Hebrews were addicted to the gods of Egypt. They had lived among them for hundreds of years. And now, at least a couple of hundred years anyways, and now they were going to be expelled, but they were still intoxicated with the gods of Egypt. So this had to be removed from them. My marvels may be multiplied in the land of Egypt, so that the Egyptians and the Hebrews would all see what God was going to do. Moses and Aaron had performed all these marvels before Pharaoh. But the Lord had stiffened the heart of Pharaoh so that he would not let the Israelites go from the land. They had to go through all the birth pains, just as we're going through the birth pains in this world right now. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, this month, Chodesh Hazeh, shall mark for you the beginning of months. So this shows us that we're in Pesach is in the month of Nisan. Nisan is the beginning of months. This is what God ordained for our people. But what do our people do? We made September. We made Tishrei, the month of Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, instead of Pesach, Nisan, being the head of the year. It shall be the first of months of the year for you. And God tells us in the Torah, do not add and do not take away. And we don't realize when we do, there are consequences. Speak to the community of Israel and say that on the 10th day of this month, each of them shall take a lamb. Here it says, or a kid, which means a baby goat. So it could be a lamb from the sheep or a baby goat. Seh means either sheep or goat. To a family, a lamb to a household. Now, one of the things that we see in certain religions, and a couple in particular, they say this is the Lamb of God. They're going to try to take this whole scenario here and turn it into the Lamb of God who came to take away the sins of the world. And this is not, because you'll never hear them say the goat of God came to take away the sins of the world. Do not change his words. But if the household is too small for a lamb, let it share one with a neighbor who dwells nearby, in proportion to the number of persons. You shall contribute for the lamb according to what each household will eat. Your lamb shall be without blemish. Every time we were to make an offering, it always had to be without blemish, the best. When we bring something to God, we bring the best. 1-year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. It would be a lamb or a kid. And you shall watch over it until the 14th day of the month. And at all the assembled congregation of the Israelites shall slaughter it at twilight. If the household is too small for a lamb, well, you shall contribute. I don't see it here where it says bring the lamb into the house. All it says, you shall watch over it. It's like from the word shamor, guard it. All this time I was thinking that they had to bring it into the house. It doesn't say that. You shall watch over it. Maybe it was in a separate shelter. Maybe it was outside, but they had to watch over it, take care of it. And they would kill this little innocent lamb at twilight, which is between the two lights, noon and evening. They shall take some of the blood and put it on the two sides of the door, the mezuzot, and the lintel, the tops, the very top of the door, in which they are to eat it. And they shall eat the flesh that same night.
Sorry, that's a famous verse that Christianity says represents the cross.
Yes, I was thinking of, but I didn't say it. But that's very true.
Yeah.
They say that it represents where his head was at the top of the door, and that on the two hands that were the nails went through. But it had nothing to do with a sacrifice. As we'll see, it had to do with obedience, because those who didn't obey, if they were an Egyptian, they would, and the Egyptians did this because they believed at this point the firstborn in their house would be saved. It had nothing to do with a sacrifice, with an offering for sin, because nowhere does it say that all those who were in the house with the blood on the doorpost had to confess their sins. It had nothing to do with that. It has to
And
do.
the doorpost is just, it's the most, I mean, that's a place where it's the obvious place. That's the front of your house. It's like a sign. Like it doesn't represent the shape. It's the doorpost. It's the front
Exactly.
of the house.
Exactly. Yes, Jerry, were you saying something?
Oh, I'm sorry.
They shall eat the flesh that same night. They shall eat it roasted over fire with matzot, unleavened bread, and maror, bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw. We know we can't eat anything with blood in it. That would be spoken about later. No raw food or cooked with water. An offering always had to be with fire. Heads, legs, and entrails over the fire. You shall not leave any of it over until morning. If any of it is left until morning, you shall burn it. They were going to be leaving. They weren't going to be leaving any of this food overnight, because these, not sure exactly why, but it's like you leave clean. Don't leave any of these foods. This was a god to these people. Don't leave anything overnight to rot in the house. But this is how you shall eat it: your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, your staff in your hand. Eat it hurriedly. It is a Zebach Pesach. It's an offering of Pesach. Now, this word Pesach, it's very interesting. Pesach has let me just click on the word here because I want to show you what it says here. Here. Where did I see it? No, it was a different. Anyway, the word itself means it's not, it must have given me it in another place. Maybe here, hold on. I want to show you. Anyway, I don't know where it is, but it says Pesach means, can be lame. When a person is lame, they can't move, they can't walk. And the word for Pesach means a protective covering that God is going to, when he sees the blood, he's going to be as if he were lame or protective. He would not allow the angel of death, who obviously he has given the ability to take a life, because it says
Sorry, what's the word you say? Lame? Lame?
Lame, lame.
Okay.
That's Pesach. That's what it means in Hebrew.
Okay.
Nowhere does it say Passover. It means an offering that shows that God himself will protect, will cover that door. It's as if he will be unmovable in front of that door so that the angel of death could not get in. For that night, I, meaning God, will go through the land of Egypt and strike down every male firstborn in the land of Egypt, not female, every firstborn male, both human and beast. And I will
I
dish
thought
out.
I understood. I'm not sure. I thought earlier on, there were females and males were killed.
No, never.
So what did I read before? Yeah, I know. I was looking for, I said, why am I reading that? Maybe, and I have to find out where it was.
No, it's not this particular place, because it's only the firstborn.
Oh, maybe it was in another, okay, later on, because I was reading later stuff. Anyway, I'll find it.
It's every firstborn male in the land of Egypt, both human and beast, whether they were Egyptian or Hebrew. If Egyptians covered the blood on the door, whoever was indoor would be safe. And I will mete out punishments to all the gods of Egypt. I, Yud He Vav He. And on the blood, and the blood on the houses where you are saying, shall be a sign for you. When I see the blood, I will pasach, so that no plague will destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. This day shall be to you one of remembrance. You shall celebrate it as a chag le'Adonai, a festival to God throughout all the ages. And we have been doing that. Even in the Holocaust, in the camps, they celebrate Pesach. In wherever we were, all throughout, in every country we've been scattered, we celebrate Pesach. You shall celebrate it as it's here, the word is institution, but it's here, it's hukat. Hukat is an ordinance that we don't really understand, but God says, you do this, and he has his reasons. We're to celebrate it for all time. God wants us as a people to continue to celebrate it so that we will never forget where we come from. Now we're constantly, we're a people of remembrance. We remember October 7th. We remember the Holocaust. We remember the pogroms. We remember the Spanish Inquisition. This is the first one that we were told to remember. Remember freedom from Egypt, what you went through. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, matzot. On the very first day you shall remove the leaven from your houses. For whoever eats leavened bread from the first day to the seventh, that person shall be cut off from Israel. So if there are Jewish people today who don't celebrate Pesach and eat bread, they're cut off from God's Israel. They may consider themselves a Jew, but God is not going to protect them. God is not going to watch out for them the way he's watching out for his people, for Israel. We can remove ourselves from our own people. You shall celebrate a sacred occasion, kadosh, holy. It's separated from the rest on the first day, and a sacred on the seventh. So the first day and the seventh day are holidays. No work at all shall be done on them. Only what every person is to eat, that alone may be prepared for you. You shall observe Hamatzot, the feast of unleavened bread, on the first day. The rest is called for 7 days. 7 days it's the feast of unleavened bread. For on this very day I brought your ranks out of the land of Egypt. You shall observe this day throughout the ages as a chok, as hukat, for all times, olam. Kat, olam. Now in the first month, from the 14th day of the month, 14th day of Nisan, at evening, it's also called, at that time it was also called Aviv, which means spring. You shall eat unleavened bread until the 21st day of the month in the evening. No leaven shall be found in your houses for 7 days. Leaven represents the bread rising. The bread gets puffed up. When we get puffed up, we are proud. We are arrogant. God wants us spiritually poor, humbled. For whoever eats what is leavened, that person, now this is really important, whether a ger, a stranger, bager, or a citizen, a native born of the country of Israel, whoever eats leavened, whatever is leavened, meaning regular bread, shall be cut off from the community of Israel. So this is really important because it's not only for the natural born citizen, but also for the stranger who lives among us, the Ruths, we have a prophet, Obadiah, in the prophets. He wasn't a natural born citizen. He was a ger. Caleb was a ger. He was a Kenizzite. Rabbi Akiva was a ger. We have people who live among us, people in our congregation were gerim, but they came to be part of Israel, and they formed the nation of Israel. They had to do exactly the same thing that we had to do. You shall eat nothing leavened. In all your settlements, you shall eat unleavened bread. Moses then summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, go and pick out lambs for your families and slaughter, shochet, the Pesach. Take a bunch of hyssop, which is the lowliest of plants. Dip it in the blood that is in the basin. Apply some of the blood that is in the basin to the lintel and the two doorposts, and none of you shall go outside the door of your house until morning. For the Lord, when going through to smite the Egyptians, will see the blood on the lintel and the two mezuzot, and the Lord will pasach the door, protect the door, cover the door, be lame, immobile in front of that door, and not let the destroyer enter and smite your home. You shall observe this as a chok, lachak, for you and your descendants. It should be ledorotam, here it's benecha, your children. And when you enter the land that the Lord will give you as promised, you shall observe this rite here, et ha avodah, this work, You should.
Peggy,
Yes.
sorry, I know I'm very tired. Maybe I'm gonna ask this.
What?
When the blood on the door was to protect the firstborn.
Yes.
So it's not everybody who just the firstborn.
No,
So
it's the
if
firstborn male.
if the fifthborn went outside, they would not like I know I'm being
Well, all I know is it's a chok. We don't know why God said stay in your house,
okay.
but it must have been a very frightening event.
I guess because I'm
Maybe to protect them from seeing what was going to happen, because a lot of
maybe
people would die
yeah
that night.
yeah no, I'm not trying to be picky because
That's okay. You can
having
be picky.
come myself from being involved with other religions, including Christianity, um, the idea of a man dying for our sins, and they take it from one of the things they take it from is here, but it's literally talking about the firstborn. It's not about covering our sins. So
Yeah,
that really changes that discussion.
exactly. Well, that's why they had, in order to form a new religion, they have to get rid of the Torah.
Yeah.
And what they do is they say that the Torah is no longer valid, or we're now under grace. We don't come under the curse of the law.
But even those who do consider the Torah, they take that and they extract this, and it's almost
No,
like,
because they say now it's a new and a better covenant.
yeah, they say it's better, it's true. Or
Yeah,
it's like progressive revelation, and now we're at,
exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's not the case. The Torah is the basis of all things.
right,
The root, you can't throw out the root and hope the plant will stay alive.
right.
Because if you change that, you can change anything. And when children ask you, what do you mean by this rite, this ritual? You shall say, it is the Zebach Pesach. It is the offering of protection from the Lord to the Lord, by the Lord, who passed, who protected the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when smiting the Egyptians, but saved our houses. Those assembled then bowed low in homage. They really were humbled by this. And the Israelites went and did so, just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. So they did. And in the middle of the night, Yud He Vav He struck down all the male firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on the throne, to the firstborn of the captive who was in the jungle, and all the firstborn of the cattle. And Pharaoh arose in the night with all his courtiers and all the Egyptians, because there was a loud wail, a cry in Egypt, for there was no house where there was not someone dead. And he summoned Moses and Aaron in the night and said, get up, depart, get away from my people. You and the Israelites with you, go and serve God as you have said. Take your flocks and your herds and get out of here, be gone. And may you bring a blessing upon me also. The Egyptians urged the people on, impatient to have them leave the country, for they said, we'll all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls wrapped in their cloaks upon their shoulders. The Israelites had done Moses' bidding and asked the Egyptians for objects of silver and gold and clothing. And the Lord disposed the Egyptians favorably, chen, toward the people, and they let them have their request. Thus the word here is, it says they stripped, they plundered the Egyptians, or they there were several words that here, where is it? Let me see it here. Um, Here. No, at Mitzrayim. No, this one. Here. Thus they snatch away, deliver, rescue. You see, one word can mean so many things depending on the context. Here, they took it from this one to strip themselves, to be plucked out of away from the Egyptians, delivered from sin, rescued. It could be so many things, depending on the different levels of interpretation. Fal, piel, you feel. There's so many ways of looking at the same thing, but the most typical one was that's how they plundered the Egyptians. Really, because they had been slaves for so long, here they were being paid for all the work that they did. The Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, and there were 600,000 fighting men on foot, aside from those who didn't fight. So if you figure each 600,000 men, and you take maybe they have wives, children, their parents, their grandparents, and those who came with them, there were a few million people. It says, moreover, a mixed multitude, Erev Rav. The mixed multitude went with them. And Caleb was part of that mixed multitude. He was a Kenizzite. Because remember, not only did you didn't only have Egyptians living in Egypt, you had slaves of different places of the world. Joseph was sold as a slave, and he was from Canaan. So, there were Kenizzites. There were different tribes that had been taken into slaves, and also as they were leaving. But here, a mixed multitude went with them, with a lot of livestock, with both flocks and herds. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had taken out of Egypt, for it had not leavened, since they had been driven out of Egypt and could not delay, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. So they were making a type of flatbreads. The length of time that the Israelites lived in Egypt was 430 years. Now, according to historical evidence that they have, and what the rabbis say, that this was not exactly, it was from the time that Abraham had the vision at the Brit HaBetarim, when the covenant of the parts, when he was put to sleep, and then he was given a vision that they would be slaves in Egypt for over 400 years. So from that moment of time, but here they believe that the worst of the slavery was only about the last 70 years. At the end of the 430th year, to the very day, all the ranks of the Lord departed from the land of Egypt. From the time he had the vision, Abraham, to the time they left was 430 years. There was for Adonai a night of vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. That same night is the Lord's, one of vigil for all the children of Israel throughout the ages. It's like, I love the picture that's displayed here, that on this night, God is watching his people. He's keeping vigil. He's watching over us as we sit in our homes and we celebrate our Seders and we eat the lamb and we read this story. And it's like he's watching over us. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, this is the law, Zot Chukat Pesach. This is the ordinance of the Pesach. For it says, Kol ben nachar lo ochel bo. The nachar is those who are not interested in being part of the people of Israel. They're not interested in being part of the people of God. None of those shall eat of it. But anyone who has purchased a male slave may eat of it once he has been circumcised, because it's the sign of the circumcision that is a covenant that you belong to the God of Israel. There are many people who are God-fearing, but have chosen not to be circumcised. They may be what's called part of the commonwealth of Israel, or they may love Israel. They may love the God of Israel, but they're not part of the people, because there is a cost. When God redeemed us, there's a cost, and that's what he's showing us. No bound or hired labor shall eat of it. It may be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of the flesh outside the house, nor shall you break a bone. The whole community of Israel shall offer it. If a male stranger, ger, meaning the ger was the one who dwelled with us, wanted to be part of us, who dwells with you, would offer the Zebach Pesach to Adonai, all his males must be circumcised. Then he shall be admitted to offer it. He shall then be like the citizen of the country. No differentiation. Sadly, our rabbis today have created this idea of the 7 Noahide laws. It's not what the Torah said. The Torah doesn't say you who are not natural born citizens, if you're in the house, you don't have to put the blood on the door. You just follow the Noahide laws. It doesn't say that. You have to be circumcised. You have to do what we do. You're part of us. No uncircumcised man may eat of it. There shall be, look what this says here, Torah achat, one Torah, for the citizen and for the ger who dwells among us. What happened? There's no such thing as a Shabbos Goy. And all the Israelites did so, as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. That very day, the Lord delivered the Israelites from the land of Egypt, troop by troop. The Lord spoke further to Moses, saying, consecrate to me every firstborn male. This is the Pinyan Haben, where we give him the firstborn to serve God, human and beast. The first issue of every womb among the Israelites is mine. They would have a special role. They would have a double inheritance and double responsibility. Usually the firstborn male in the family is the one who takes the place of the father after the father passes away. He gets a double inheritance. He's the one to whom the responsibility of watching over the family is handed down to. And Moses said to the people, remember this day on which you went free from Egypt, the house of bondage, how the Lord freed you from it with a mighty hand. No leavened bread shall be eaten. You go free on this day in the month of Aviv. Here, Aviv. The Torah gives us the original names of some of the months. Today, all the months that we celebrate are really pagan names that have come from either the Egyptians or later. I don't know them all, but they're not the original Hebrew names of the months. But Aviv is also the month of spring. So when the Lord has brought you into the land of the Canaanim, Hittim, the Amori, the Hivi, the Yebusi, which was sworn to your fathers to be given to you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you shall observe in this month the following practice. 7 days you eat unleavened bread, and the 7th shall be a festival of Yud He Vav He. Throughout the 7 days, unleavened bread shall be eaten. No leavened bread shall be found with you, and no leaven shall be found in all your territories. It's interesting that it says here, we celebrate the Pesach on the first day, but we rarely do, and I know a lot of people do actually. On the seventh day, they hold another festival. They call it another Seder, but there should be on the seventh day another meal that we share together, another festival. No leaven shall be found in all your territory. You shall explain to your child on that day, it is because of what Yud He Vav He did for me when I went free from Egypt. And this shall serve as a sign on your hand and as a reminder on your forehead. Now, this is obviously it's not, well, it's taken literally today, where that's where they get the tefillin, but they wrap it around their hand and they put the box on their forehead. But literally, it doesn't literally mean that. It means it's a sign that whatever you do with your hands, whatever you think of with your minds, remember the Torah, remember this day, remember the Pesach, in order that the teaching, the Torah of God will be in your mouth. Here, where does it say? Torat Yud He Vav He, the Torah of God. It shall be in your mouth, and that with a mighty hand the Lord freed you from Egypt. We need to remember this as the formula, the pattern that Israel would live for really forever. All throughout the time we're here on earth, we would be following this pattern, that when we go into a foreign land, we are not to follow their gods, but we are to remember the Pesach, how God protects us, how he watches over us, and celebrate it and teach others and teach it to our children. Keep it as a hukat hazot. This is not an institution, an ordinance at its set time. We follow a lunar calendar, and the lunar calendar has a set time for this Pesach every year. The lunar is not like the Roman calendar, which remains the same all the time. I remember our rabbi used to call it Steady Freddy. But the lunar calendar changes according to the moon. And that's why we add sometimes a whole month to be in sync with the Roman calendar. But the lunar calendar is very different. But God gave it to us to be celebrated on the 14th of Aviv every year, the set time, his day, his moed here, le moed, moedah, from year to year. And when the Lord has brought you into the land of the Canaanites, as God swore to you and to your fathers, and has given it to you. So all the people of the world who think that's not our land, come back and argue with God. You shall set apart for the Lord every first issue of the womb, every male firstling that your cattle drops shall be the Lord's, not only the male boy, but the male of the cattle. But every firstling donkey you shall redeem with a sheep. If you do not redeem it, you must break its neck, and you must redeem every male firstborn among your children. And when in time to come a child of yours asks, saying, what does this mean? You shall reply, it was with a mighty hand that the Lord brought us out from Egypt, the house of bondage, the house of slavery. We are no longer slaves. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord slew every male firstborn in the land of Egypt, the firstborn of both human and beast. Therefore, I offer to the Lord every first male issue of the womb. This is the ceremony of the Pinyan Haben, when we have a ceremony offering this, our firstborn, to God, but redeem every firstborn among my children, every male. And so it shall be as a sign upon your hand, and as a symbol on your forehead, that with a mighty hand the Lord freed us from Egypt. So these are symbols. They're not necessary that we do them. They don't have any magic power. I see young kids going into the hospitals and the shopping centers, taking the tefillin and making people put on and pray them as if by praying them something mystical is going to happen. These are signs that we need to obey God, that we need to remember what God's done, that we need to always turn back and follow Him, not follow some religious traditions that don't mean anything. So, isn't that great? I love these stories. Any comments before we say good evening? Well, I guess we covered a lot. And if you, so just remember.
Bye, everybody.
Are you leaving, Richard? Nice to see you. So what are we now? We are the month of January, February, March, April. I'm not sure when Pesach is coming, Pesach, but it's only a few months away. And we're going to be reading this story again. So we thank our God for all his blessings. We pray that God will watch over us, deliver those who are still held captive. But it's more than just being held physically captive. It's being held captive to ideologies, which we've had to let go of. Miriam, you and I were both involved in a lot of New Age stuff, a lot of different types of religions and philosophies that hold on so tight, and it takes years to change our
It's an
paradigm.
ongoing thing.
It's an ongoing
I
thing.
mean, because even from our own emotions and our own, there's so many things we're captive to.
Exactly. Yes, Baruch. I can't read lips.
There's a new show and an old show. Hollywood Squares. They brought it back on now.
That's really it really makes me
Ryan,
think of lots.
I'm amazed at the depth of the wisdom that's coming from you about Pesach.
Because this show was a lady. She
Yeah.
said, "My wife." You know what that means? She's the male of a.
Well, she certainly doesn't agree with the Torah.
Yeah.
I love the fact that President Trump is instituting this. There's only male and only female. Even Polyev said that. There's only male and only female. That's it, period. There are no other genders, unless you want to be a donkey. You know, you
No,
can
it's a mule.
you can
Trans
identify
rabbits.
as a donkey or a chicken.
No, donkeys are male and female. It's the mule, the mixture of the horse with the donkey.
I
They all
identify with being a mule.
have no what you call it.
Honestly, we
Yep.
need some common sense to come back into this world. You know, I wrote a letter. I wrote an email to President Trump today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I sent a copy to you, Miriam.
Oh,
I wrote him an email asking
where do you send it?
for your emails.
No,
Because
no, but where did you
today,
send it?
to President Trump.
He has an email accessible to?
Yeah. You know, whether he reads it or not, I don't know.
Right.
But he's very accessible to people.
Okay.
But I asked him to bring back the 10 Commandments, to put them back in schools, back in the courtrooms, back in our homes. The 10 Commandments is the essence of the Torah.
Yeah.
And even Yeshua himself said that when they asked him, how do you sum up the 10 Commandments? And he said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. Meodecha means all your resources, everything that you have. Show your love to God with everything that you have, and love your neighbor as you love yourself. All this sums up the 10 Commandments. So that's all that we can do, is learn how to live them in our lives. And I believe that it's going to take a tremendous working of God's hands, the way he did in Egypt, he's going to have to do it in this world, because words don't change anybody. You can't legislate against anti-Semitism. You can't legislate against hatred. It has to be a change of heart, and only God can circumcise our hearts, as he says. To be part of Israel, you need to be physically circumcised, but the spiritual understanding is a circumcision of the heart. It doesn't mean that you go in there and you cut a piece off the top of the heart. The same way as he says, put the sign on the doorpost, or put it on the forehead and your hands. These are symbols. It's like David had a heart of a lion. It's not literal. There's some pictures that just show that he's courageous. So thank you for being here with me tonight, this evening, Jerry. It's always a pleasure. Miriam, always a delight to listen to your comments. Brian, yours are always a surprise to me. You always have something that comes out of nowhere, but I like to hear you. All right, we'll see you soon, and I wish you a Shabbat Shalom.
But shalom.
Look forward to seeing you again, God willing, next week. And adios, as they say.
Adios.